got the northern lights. Lights. Baby, you just kick your feet up while I kick back. I roll one with you by my side.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Bold, Black, and Addicted to Bravo. Because I'm bold, Black, and addicted to Bravo. But I don't like to just talk into the abyss and talk to no one. I love when I can gather with other people, exchange ideas and thoughts. So for this series, I will be gathering with other people who share those titles and some who don't. So we can just have great conversations about things happening in life and things that we all go through, but through the lens of something that unifies us all, which is our addiction to Bravo. And so I'm so excited about the guest I have for our first episode today. I have with me Taria from the What Else Is Going On podcast. And I'll give everybody a chance to introduce themselves a little bit more in just a moment. And I have Dr. Monica, who was formerly on Camp Getaway and now runs some clubhouses for Bravo clubhouse rooms. And I have LaKeya, who is a clubhouse moderating queen. And LaKeya, do you have actually, let's do this. Let's start with everyone introducing themselves, and we'll start with LaKeya.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me. My name is LaKeya DeWalt. You can find me at miss.lakiki to you. It's miss.lakiki, the number 2 you, if you're nasty. And I do moderate a room in Club Bravo on Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, about the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then I'll just go in counterclockwise. So Dr. Monica.
Hi guys, my name is Dr. Monica. First of all, I want to say that I love being here with all of you. I have so much respect for all of you. LaKeya actually was the very first moderator for Club Bravo, and she kind of set the standard. She really did. I learned a couple of tricks from LaKeya. So you guys, mad respect to LaKeya. Mm-hmm. And then also Taria. I mean, come on, Taria, who is just having this meteoric rise we're so proud of. And then of course, you, Nyemade, you always are holding it down. So I appreciate being here, you guys. You guys can find me on almost any platform at Dr.Monica or Dr. Monica O'Neill. Google me, you'll find me.
Yes. And Taria.
First, I'm going to piggyback off the on what Dr. Monica said and say thank you for having me, Nyemade. There is something special about talking to girlfriends, to women, but my soul gets so happy when I can talk to fellow Black women. We can talk about our experiences, what we've been through. We can just give each other a look and say, girl, do you get it? I get it. So I appreciate every single one of y'all beautiful ladies. You can find the podcast, What Else Is Going On, anywhere podcasts can be found. I know y'all hate when podcasters say that. I've heard y'all, but you can really find it where podcasts can be found. And I'm on Instagram at WeGo, WEIGO podcast, and on Twitter at TSFAISON, where I really get my life.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I didn't even fully introduce themselves. My name is Nyemade, or on social media, I'm That African Butterfly. I do a lot of different things. I mostly live on Instagram. I love doing lives and having interviews and just anytime I can talk to people about different stuff, because I'm nosy as heck. And I realized that I can actually use it as a talent and talk to people. So that's what I do. But really, I'm just nosy. But thank you all so much for joining me. So, the series is called Bold, Black, and Addicted to Bravo. So I feel like, before we start our discussion, we should make sure that everybody is a card holding member, that everyone has their Black card. So I'm going to ask you all a few questions from Black Card Revoked. Dun, dun, dun. Just to make sure you are equipped for this conversation. You can phone a friend.
Okay, Z-weighing us. What is that?
I want that. Oh my, I'm hating right now.
You can phone a friend if you need to. And then there's a couple group questions as well, where it's majority rules. So those should be a little bit easier. So first, I will start with Taria. According to Queen B, what's the best revenge? A, slaying. B, dinner at Red Lobster. C, a mean wig, or D, your paper?
Your paper.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Black people don't know the words, so I'm really Black.
And like you just know like the little bits of words.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Monica. They are homegirls living in the 90s kind of world. Is it Whitley, Jaleesa?
You
Kim,
are
Freddie?
living single.
Reading Sydney,
Sorry.
Khadijah, Sinclair, Maxine, Regine, or T-Boz, Left Eye, and Chili?
Khadijah. What was it? What? Oh my God, I just forgot it. Khadijah.
Sinclair, Maxine.
Sinclair, yes. Maxine and Regine. Honey. The original.
All right, and then LaKeya.
Even though Golden Girls might be original. Did I just lose my black card with that?
No, I think those are the original Living Single
Golden Girls
Girls.
are like like Golden Girls.
Yeah.
They're the original.
The author
Yeah.
kind of lives
Yeah.
that thug life. Yeah.
I think it works. LaKeya, what does it mean when your hotline blings? Is it your telephone is ringing, you making money, someone needs late night love, or Drake is on the radio?
This is so horrible because I see the video and I feel like I'm going to be the first one without a black card.
No, girl,
But,
you can phone a friend.
Hey,
That your telephone is ringing?
oh wait.
you-
Say it again. Say it again.
Okay.
All of them again.
A, the telephone is ringing. B, you making money. C, someone needs late night loving. Or D, Drake is on the radio.
See, late night loving.
Yes.
Alex.
All right. You all got those questions right. So I'm going to do just a couple group ones to make sure that we're all on the same page. Then we'll start this discussion. And since we're recording on this blessed Sunday morning, but none of us are in church, we're going to ask some church questions just to make sure, just to see,
I did my Bible plan this morning on my Bible app.
All right. So this is a group agrees on the answer, right? What's the moment you hate at church? A, when you got to stay after. B, mama talking to everybody. C, getting out of the parking lot. D, when the collection plate goes around again. What
was A again?
A is when you have to stay after. B is your mom talking to everybody. C is getting out of the parking lot. And D is when the collection plate goes around. I can say for me, my vote is B. My mom wanted to stay and talk to everybody, and I just wanted to go.
Yeah.
And then I became that mom. So yeah.
Yes, I like B because there's a lot of talking. Because when my mom was there, if the collection plate came around, I just looked at her.
Right. Like, not my problem.
Yes.
Right.
All right. And then last one. Who is most liable to say grace the longest before dinner? Your mama, your dramatic auntie, me, thank you, your uncle, or a cousin that just came home?
Came home
Uncle.
for where?
Uncle.
You guys
Oh,
say
that's
uncle?
true. I say uncle, but she said a cousin that came home from where?
True.
But
A
uncle,
ward
yes.
locked up, like,
From away.
Right.
Summer camp.
Yep.
Summer camp.
If
Yeah,
you're
I'll go
Teresa.
with uncle as well. All right. Thank you all for playing those questions with me. Glad we're all on the same
Wait,
page.
it's not just your uncle, it's your uncle who's also a deacon.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And has to pray for a long time. You just like keep opening one eye to see if everyone else has their eyes closed and how long it's going to go.
And they could cut the prayer if after every word, I mean, I know we're giving praise, but oh Lord, it's like you could have cut like 10 minutes off.
Yeah.
Facts.
Validation.
All right. Well, I love playing that with you guys. So we're going to get into today's topic. And the topic is actually respectability politics. So the first one I wanted to kick off with is, I guess you could call it slut shaming, body shaming. It's from the most recent episode of, well, no, not most recent, but the most recent episodes of The Real Housewives of Potomac. And it is Wendy being shamed for her body. Giselle literally said that, she lacked substance, the substance that she had last year. I have thoughts on it, her saying that just because Happy and Ness are out, that's what Wendy calls her new girls, her new twins. But I wanted to know what you all think about it as far as does a woman's physical appearance dictate her substance?
I definitely don't feel like it does. I've gotten that same thing from church people mainly. Something is too tight or too shapely or blah, blah, blah. But I find it interesting that they give allowance for Ashley to have changed, even though I don't think she has, but because she had a baby. But they don't realize that Wendy was 8 weeks postpartum. And as a mother of 3, I can tell you, I'm a totally different person than after I just had a baby 2 months ago, ankle still swollen, breast still full of breast milk. So they give an allowance for Ashley, but they don't give an allowance that Dr. Wendy could have changed too, or stepping into the person that she always was, but we didn't see it because we know what happened last year and what took over. So for them to talk about her boobs and it being out, and I've seen more of you than I've seen last year. Well, also, can we look at the time that they're filming? Because it seems like their clothes are different. So are we filming that? They're filming differently than they were last year. And even aside from all that, I hate when women can't just celebrate other women. I wish they would say, girl, take that shirt off, get naked, let's see that body.
Yeah.
So I dislike that, but I do have to ask y'all a question. What constitutes shaming? Because I hear a lot of people use in different things like, oh, you're slut shaming. Oh, you're mental health shaming. Oh, you're this shaming. And are they shaming and what constitutes versus just coming at her,
Mm-hmm. That's a great question.
I have an answer, but LaKeya, I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh,
you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that about the motherhood thing, because I don't have children. So I didn't even think about just being a little different after you have a baby versus, hey, guys, you just met me. You don't know who I am. You only have 1 6-month data point. You don't have 20 years of data points. You don't get to tell me how I've changed. So no, I don't think I don't think we should judge a woman by her appearance. I don't think that what Wendy's doing, she's proud, she's happy, she's not poking it in anybody's face. I don't think. And so she looks good. She looks good. No one's complaining. And as far as the shaming, I'm very interested in what the doctor has to say, but I will say my uneducated guess would be maybe shaming would be more if they're like, oh, closures, maybe being negative about it as far as talking about her, like, oh, you need to cover up, you need to do this. So, and doing it consistently, that might be shaming. But once they said the words, you're not as good as you were pretty much last year, that became a source of shame, I feel. LaKeya done speaking. Oh, that's a Clubhouse thing.
That's a Clubhouse.
Sorry.
No, I was thinking the same thing. That's why I passed the mic to you earlier. So, it's interesting because, LaKeya, I think I kind of agree with you. And I definitely agree with what Teresa said, but I also very much disagree with you guys on one point. So here's the thing. Now, I think it's shaming because they made it about her character and they said that she lacks substance now and that there's nothing else going on with her. But I do think that it's okay for girlfriend to be like, child, something's up. Like, I think that makes sense to ask your friend, what is going on? Because this, like, Happy and Ness, cool. You want to wear a bustier? Cool. Like, look, get your body snatched, do what you want. I'm all about a woman making decisions about what she wants to do with her body. But Wendy's clothes ain't fitting. That's my thought. Like, if it were my friend, I'd be like, be proud of your body, but let's get, like, maybe you should get some clothes that fit Happy and Ness. That's it. It's just like, for me, like, I mean, maybe it's just like a thing that I would do with my girlfriends, like sister, I would do that. I'd be like, sis, it's not fitting. Because if you think about Wendy in that bustier, right? Mm-hmm. And then let's think about it. And I didn't even realize like what my kind of like hesitancy with like kind of like just dragging Giselle and all of them. you know, because I do think Giselle doesn't know how to communicate without being shaming, or to try to make a point without being shaming. But when I saw Ebony, for instance, in her camel bustier, I was like, homegirl's rocking a similar thing, but hers fits. That's the only thing. It's like, for me, I was like, Wendy, it's okay to show your body. Your body's banging. Do it. And as a doctor, I'm like, show your body. Like, your body is also a part of you, something you could be proud of. And people do want to say, like, I've had people say to me, like, are you sure you want to do that? You sure you want to post that on Instagram? And I'm like, I'm sure it's mine. Yes, I'll do with it what I want. And I think Wendy should have that choice, even if it means it feels like fitting into clothes or putting on clothes that might be, you know, junior size. But all I'm saying is that, like, for me, I would say to my girl, like, look, you looking good. Like, you really looking good, but I want you to look your, you know, like maybe it might, you know, maybe you need to think about how you're fitting clothes, like happiness. Now you might have to get something a little more tailored to your body, because, you know, like, I want you to feel good and to feel sexy, but some, you know, it's a little clear that, like, it's not quite fitting. You know what I mean? I would just, I don't know. I don't know what I would say, but it's like, it didn't register for me what it was until that, you know what I mean? Because I'll do what you want to do, but it's like, I also know that Wendy's trying to give a vibe, and I think her vibe is being lost in, like, the fit, if that makes sense.
Did you hear her say that her boobs, hadn't dropped yet? She had just got the surgery, so they hadn't.
Right. No, I get that. No, that's what I figured. I figured they didn't drop, but like that also was too small.
And yeah, I was concerned about that too.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the compression on them. I was like, don't we want them fluffing out? And, you know, like, you know, why are we pushing?
I think you want to keep them compressed.
You do?
Okay. Yeah, you do want to keep them compressed until they get into good shape. But it's like
medical Versace.
The thong thing, you know, like, you can be sexy.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, you know, look, I still have clothes that are from, like, the junior section, and sometimes I'll buy, but I really can't buy from the junior section anymore, you know? Like, I mean, physically wise, I probably could wear it, right? But it's like, you know, and I still sometimes, like, now I'm, like, starting to not be able to buy from Forever 21, and I feel like Wendy needs to, like, maybe just think about it. Like, you got an adult grown woman body with some boobies and some ass. Maybe buy some adult grown woman clothing sizes. That's all.
See,
what size up?
I feel like on a personal level, I agree with that about, like, the sizing and stuff. Mm-hmm. But overall, I'm just like, girl, do what you want. Like, if it makes you feel good, I don't care if I disagree with you or not. Even as, like, a homegirl, like, if you ask me my opinion, I will give it to you. Mm-hmm. If you don't ask me, I assume it's because you're doing good and you don't want it, because I know I'm the same way. I'm great about asking people for advice and help, but, like, there are certain people I don't ask, and it's because I don't want your advice or opinion in that area, because I know that it's going to be vastly different to mine and I don't want to hear it. So I think there's some of that. And the thing that got me the most was just Giselle saying that she lacks the substance. Because I think that if they had come to that whole conversation, like, hey, you know, like how Ashley was trying to say, we've noticed personality changes, we just want to make sure you're okay, that would have been totally different than, you know, focusing in on her looks first and, like, the substance that she brings. And it's part of why I wanted to talk about this, because, you know, there's the quote, what someone says about you says more about them than it does about you. Yes. And I feel like in this situation, it's definitely that, because Giselle saying that Wendy lacks substance because her boobs are out more says that, to me, that Giselle can't see Wendy as having that substance, because Wendy's still a doctor. She's still a CNN commentator. She still has everything that she had prior that made Giselle think she had substance. She just has happiness in our faces now. And Giselle is so distracted by it that for her, it takes away from what Wendy brings to the table. So, like, I kind of got when Mia was sort of on both sides explaining it, where she's like, yeah, you know, have your body, do what you want, but also, yeah, it's going to impact the way people think about you and see you. And I think that it does. And I think that that's not fair. And that sort of goes into the respectability thing, because as much as we all want to say, do you, girl, do whatever, we still live in a society that's like, hey, I'm going to judge you by how you look. So it's like, which do you play into? Do you do what you want and try to fight against that, which I think is what Wendy's trying to do? Or do you try to cater yourself towards the position and where you want to rise? Because, you know, the only way to do that is by fitting in a certain mold of what's going on around you.
I think
Well,
you do
it's
what you want.
interesting.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I was just going to say, well, I think you do what you want, because Wendy was just recently a Fox commentator and she didn't have Versace. She had on what you would wear as a commentator. So if she was showing up to her Zoom class like that, or showing up in her commentator position, dressing like she was dressing on a girls' trip, I would say every job has basically a dress code. My husband is an electrician. He can't wear a 3-piece suit to work, right? Every job has a dress code. So if people are going to talk about you anyway, one thing you won't be able to do is talking about my professionalism, because I'm still always professional. If you don't like what I got going on over here, you're not cutting a check. Talk all you want. But the people that I'm commentating for appreciate how I look.
Yep. That's
So, I think that's true. I think the thing is, though, is that, maybe I'm giving Giselle way too much like rope and too much credit here, but I heard her say that Wendy lacks a substance that she had, not because she's like, not because her breasts are out, or her booty's out, or she has like a thong where, like that's just to God, but I think how I heard it and I don't know, like, cause I'm very conscientious of the issue of editing, you guys. Like, I'm very, very conscientious of it. I think about it all the time. Those of you who know me, we've talked about it, you can imagine as to why. And it does seem like Wendy's storyline has just been about her body. And so like her body are popping off, with Mia. And so I think that, how I heard it was that like, we get it, you have this new body, and you're only talking about it, right? And there's more to you than that. That's kind of how I heard it,
That's a
and
much
so like for
kinder
me,
way to hear it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I hear it still as like something you'd say to a girlfriend, but I think the critical piece that's missing is that sometimes, and I'm going to say this is an issue as a Black woman, right? Sometimes we just not have been given the space to be able to come to something vulnerably, right? We have not been able to come to the space typically in the world to ask for people to help us, for people to like, to reassure us. And when we do, sometimes we're either called weak, or we feel insecure and weak, or we worry that like somebody is going to like, take advantage of it. And my sense of the way that I've been seeing this, to Karen's credit, I think she's picking up on the fact that Wendy is needing reassurance. And instead of needing just the reassurance with her girlfriend to say, you look good, because she is talking about it a lot, instead of just having her girl like asking, like, you guys tell me, like, this is new. I feel a little insecure. I haven't shown my body like this before, but I want to embrace it. I'm proud of it. But at the same time, I'm scared of it, because that's a normal human reaction. And I think what we're seeing is like Wendy kind of doing what we would call exposure therapy, just like throwing herself into it and kind of like, faking it till you make it. But you can see the real vulnerability to it. She was, she was shook in this way that was like a crack to the facade of like, I don't give a F, you know what I mean? She really quite does. And it really hurt her more than anything when Giselle made this point. And again, if you look at it from the context of like, assuming that the editing is being fair in this way, her storyline has been about happiness and her new body. And I'm sure she's talking about a lot, or she's been like popping off at Mia. And that's what I heard Giselle perhaps speak. That's what I heard all the women kind of speaking to. Does that make sense? But what I think Wendy really wanted to say was like, just tell me you think I'm beautiful. Tell me like you appreciate it. Like, encourage me. I'm still getting used to this. Like, like let me be. Let's go shop. Like, let's go shopping. You want to help me? Let's go to the Versace store, find something sexy, but make sure I get the right fit.
Or
that makes
ask her.
sense, and I'm glad that you brought back perspective to it, because honestly, that wasn't the ones I was looking at it, and I can give Giselle a little more grace if I think of it that way. So thank you for bringing that lens. LaKeya, what were you gonna say?
And going on what Dr. Monica said, or ask her about her life and what you find, what was substance. Ask her how her career is going. Ask her how, transitioning, just ask her questions, not to change the subject and belittle, like she's like, oh, I'm happiness. Okay, girl, you got happiness. Well, tell me about how it's going at work, because she did mention she wears certain sweaters. That could be a whole conversation. And then also something about Giselle that I want to remind people, she was a first lady of a church. So I think as first lady, she probably has, depending on, my impression of first ladies from a smaller church is they have license to go to their congregation and give advice without people necessarily asking for it.
Yeah.
And this is old school. I don't know how it works now, but maybe she was just coming from a lens of just matter of fact, this is what I'm seeing. And from a LaKeya point of view, I was more thinking, you're going to dinner at the Williamsburg Cracker Barrel, like that outfit doesn't fit. So maybe if everybody was going on a girls' night out, it might have still been a lot compared to somebody else, but it would have been like, we're just going out to Williamsburg. So that would have been, or like Kathy Hilton said, why are you wasting this outfit on us? This is a nice outfit.
Well, I love that you mentioned Kathy, because and I'll let you pick up from that as well, but I feel like Erica frequently, especially back in the beginning, dresses inappropriately for different situations. And I don't feel like it gets the same type of conversation and dissection as Dr. Wendy. So do you think it's because of the title and the substance? Like maybe because Erica has always been outrageous?
Yeah.
It's also black body.
And
black bodies are spectacles.
What are people not like? Dorit, I was okay with her coming down like that. Y'all, we're filming a TV show at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to look my best, But as far as Giselle saying her lacking substance, but y'all didn't like what she talked about last year. So what is it? Y'all didn't like her talking about all her degrees. Now you don't like her talking about her body. So what is it? So that's why I don't give Giselle any pass in that area, because you ain't like her talking about her degrees last year.
Fact.
And I don't even think Giselle's jealous. I've heard people say Giselle's jealous. I went to the church, so Giselle was not even speaking to parishioners like that. So she definitely wasn't like old school.
Thank you.
She was. They actually had a row. It didn't start out that way, but she sat up first row. They had to put a empty row in between because sometimes women can not be so nice, and they would walk by, pull her hair, all kinds of stuff.
At church?
Yeah. So
what?
So when I say that Giselle, I don't think is jealous. People want Giselle to be vulnerable and want her to give us who she is. I think she is giving us who she is. She is this person. We got to remember, especially how we're raised sometimes as Black women, to always be strong and not be vulnerable. These are ways that people continue on through their lives. So I feel like Giselle is arrogant. I feel like she definitely believes she is that girl. So whatever you say about me, it could be true and it doesn't even matter because I'm that girl. Some people just go through life like that.
You're so unbothered during that argument. So
and when you look at her, who has she probably had to be vulnerable to? Men probably flocked to her. Her own kids said, Mom, you're not good at showing emotional support. That shows us that's who she is.
That's a great point.
So,
very great.
Thank you for sharing that and correcting that about Giselle, because it was from my perspective of a smaller. Well,
I was used to that too.
Okay.
And then when I got there, I was like, this is different. First ladies don't. I mean, and if you saw her, you wouldn't approach her because it was very, but once you start, the warmth that we see from her sometimes, she does have that too, but her guard, I think, is up because it's like, whoa.
Because her husband was having a bunch of churn in the church.
Yeah. Now, I'll just say one thing real quick too. I know about these rumors. He had one when they were married. The other one was before they were married. He had one while they were married. That's the same age as his twins. Fun fact, he wrote about her in a book and he used to bring her to church with the other girls. Because he wasn't in her life, but then he wrote a book and talked about his mistake, what he did, blah, 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 and how he was going to own up to it. The children that he's since had have been outside of her, and the youngest he has is 5. So when Karen,
go ahead. I'm so sorry.
It's just weird for me watching it, hearing it. It's like, no, wait, that is up. But as far as going back to Giselle, I think that is who she is. And if you listen to her podcast, she said, when you meet me, don't try to get deep with me. I don't ever want to get deep. Tell me you like my shoes. I have 20 friends from 20 years ago that I get deep with. I don't care about what you have to think. And I was like,
hashtag oh my God. Friends.
Okay.
I mean, and there's not anything particularly wrong with that viewpoint if that's how you choose to go through life. LaKeya, you said you had something else?
Yes, Dr. Monica, you brought something up very good as far as the spectacle of the person of color's
Black
body,
bodies.
the Black bodies. And of course, we know a lot about that. And it brought to mind how everybody was so opinionated about the Real Housewives of Atlanta's confessional looks when they were mostly wearing deep V's and their everybody was just so negative about it. And I don't know. I just wanted to toss that out there as a viewpoint of all the other franchises. We see people wearing things, and like you even brought up the Erica of it all. The ATL, they were getting a lot of flack about, and maybe it was too much for people, or I don't know. But I just thought that was interesting.
I think. Oh, sorry.
I'm done.
I was gonna say, I think what's interesting in those situations, like especially when you bring up Atlanta, because it's easy to say, like I was thinking Erica didn't get as much flack as other people. But when you bring up Atlanta, it actually reminds me, and this is a huge issue with respectability politics that we're talking about, is it's often from within the culture, right? Like it's often our very own. We saw what happened with Monique telling people to stop wearing bonnets. It's often within our own cultures, the older aunties, the people who feel like they have a license to have opinions on people's body, the people who feel like we have to act this way to simulate ourselves with the rest of the world and with white culture. They're often the ones that are throwing on those respectability politics at us more than other cultures are. Maybe not more so, but they definitely,
I would say to some degree. I think we verbalize it, but I do think that, like, as LaKeya said, I do think that the different franchises are treated differently, like even, the level of like how their arguments are seen, how their beef is seen, how the shade is being thrown, and so unfortunately, like, I think what you're, when I say the spectacle of it all, like in the real world, and through history, Black bodies, Black women, especially Black women with bodies, with humps and bumps and curves, we were used as spectacle. We literally, were spectacles in like fairs and like, in freak shows, what was her name? Sarah. Yeah, I forgot.
Was it Hottentot? Was it the Hottentot?
Yes, the Hottentot Venus, but her real name was Sarah. I forgot her last name, but so she was, a woman that just like nowadays, like Kim Kardashian has tried to like sculpt her body to look like, but she was considered like a freak show.
Yeah.
And so, and Black women slaves who had like sexier bodies were like made to be Jezebels, and and so there was a way that like our bodies couldn't just be beautiful. It couldn't just be sexy. It had to be this spectacle. And in some ways, like, I think that you see the respectability coming out of trying to keep Black women safe. Like if you actually look at the history of like the concept of the Jezebels and like the idea of like, how like white slave owners and white men used to justify raping Black women. And they actually used to be more like the Giselles. They used to be like the mixed race slaves that they had. They were considered to be more slutty and like more sexual, and it became a way that like they could justify raping them. It became a way that like white women could say, oh, you're bad and you're just a sexual being, you're not a human being, that's why he wants to have sex with you, but you're not a real person to me. And Black women, the darker skin you were, like in order to feel at all attractive, it had to be switched in its head that you were now like a more respectable woman and a woman of God, but also, then like the darker you were, the heavier you were, or whatever, then you became less attractive. So it's like this interesting thing that is so tied to slavery and the exploitation of Black bodies that still persists today, and just not seeing us as human. So like when you see a Wendy, she's darker skinned, she's all these things. And, I do think Wendy's a little insecure. I think that's why we heard about her 4 degrees so much. Like, I mean, like most people don't know, I don't talk about my degrees. My title is Dr. Monica, but like, in this world, but like, like it just, they are what they are. But it's like Wendy, I think, is still trying to find herself in this space, or trying to make her way, or and I also know there's a cultural piece to it that's not even African-American, that's not as tied to, but it's like a different kind of respectability politics because it's African, right? Whereas having those kinds of achievements are so important in a way. So I get it, but I'm just saying that like, when you look at the women in Potomac, this show that actually was built to be a show around respectability. It's supposed to be a show about women and Jack and Jill, by the way. So it was a show based on this. You see it. They're tied to that, right? And then they see themselves as kind of almost like a talented 10 type of thing, where they're supposed to be even better than the women of Atlanta, who they also kind of see as spectacle, right? So they're kind of buying into this like idea of like, you have like other things that Black people have done to protect themselves. You have to be a particular way so that you can stay safe. You're not going to get raped or whatever. You're not going to be, accused of a crime. But that is so pervasive in all of like the Bravo stuff. Like Bravo, unfortunately, still does not know how to treat their Black characters. And I say this as a former Black character. They don't know how to treat us as whole human beings. They do treat us as spectacle, and they can't quite make sense of us if we don't fit a stereotype. And unfortunately, Bravo doesn't do a good enough job of letting all of the Black women or all the Black people be complex, or even the women of color. Like, let's look at like Tiffany Moon. They don't get to be whole people. And so it's like when you see the fights and all this other stuff, it becomes like Teresa becomes this legendary fun thing, but with us, we're like animals. And even the way it's edited, like, even though Teresa's like she could eat somebody and she pushes Andy, like, it still feels more animalistic when we're like the way that they have just pieced it together. It just feels like Teresa gets to be this badass, where it's like, the Black woman becomes, Monique was an animal and she shouldn't have put her hands on Candace, but it's like Teresa has done the same thing. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yes.
And actually, I love that you brought that up, because that transitioned us into the next question. On the subject of respectability politics, same cast, but is it worse when Black cast members get into physical altercation because it validates the negative stereotypes of Black women? So do we feel like that's worse, or is it just one of those, we're just people? And as Dr. Monica just mentioned, they had physical stuff in Jersey as well. And I think there are things far worse. Like, you'll never be able to tell me anything's worse than Adriva taking off her leg and throwing it on the table at an event. Like, to me, that was like, if you want to talk about low, dirty behavior, like, to me, that is low, dirty behavior. But we have
Ramona assaulted somebody. To me, that's the worst. She actually threw a glass and hit somebody in the face. And
that's true.
That to me is actually the worst. And
that's the thing, is that when we have those with all the other casts, it's like Ramona did this thing, Aviva did this thing, Teresa did this thing. And I feel like when it happens in one of the Black cast settings, like Monique dragging Candace, it becomes, all Black women. And it happens to us all the time. We're not a monolith. And it's like, whenever someone does something, especially when it's something negative, right? Like, if it's something positive, it's like, that person is a great Black person. When it's something negative, it's like, that person represents all Black people. And I feel like it's something that we constantly have to fight against. And we see it when we look at these housewives and how people react to altercations in the different franchises. What do you all think?
I agree. And I also feel like when a Black person does something positive, if other cultures can take it away, they will. Holly Berry, first Black woman, all of a sudden the news outlets are saying, well, she's biracial, but you were calling her Black before she won this award. So it's like, when we do something great, it's like, well, let's check and see. Oh, no, they're not fully Black, to try to justify why this person was able to achieve this. That's how I feel. And I feel like Dr. Monica said earlier, they don't give us space to really be vulnerable. So with the fight with Monique last year, I was telling people, my issue isn't the fight. I've seen them. Unfortunately, I have been, in my younger years, been a part of them. My issue was other people that did not look like us, and some of us, telling all these women the conversations that they should not have. We just talked about Dr. Wendy and her clothes, and Giselle kind of trying to say, hey, they're going to look at us different. That's what they were trying to do last year, but people found fault with that. But because it's Dr. Wendy this year, they're like, girl, she's just trying to help you out. I feel like every woman was well within her right to say how they felt about that fight last year. I had white women telling me, no, Black women shouldn't be talking to other Black women like that. And I was like, who are you? And you don't even go here. So you don't get to say. I grew up, and I'm sure you ladies did too, I hope I'm not being presumptuous, but when we would go out in public, my grandma, you better not be out here embarrassing me in front of these white folks. So that's ingrained in us. It's something that we have to, it's hard. It's a double-edged sword. It's like, yeah, we don't want to fall into respectability politics, but we also know if we act certain ways, we don't get hired. Point blank, plain and simple. So
Point black.
yes, point blank. Look, I guess that was supposed to come out. Point black, plain and simple. So I felt like it was so disheartening for me to see. Let me just be transparent. A whole bunch of white folks weren't really watching Potomac like that at all, right? Then they jump on this train, and now y'all want to have commentary about something that y'all know nothing about. And I have heard other podcasters wanting to go on deep dives, wanting to have a voice in this spectrum. And I'm like, you don't get why they're saying this, why Wendy is saying this, why Wendy was saying, I don't agree with this, because she is a Fox commentator. So you want to talk about she should be careful with the clothing she wears, but being associated with a cast that's fighting could be detrimental to her. But you don't know that. So it was so disheartening to watch white folks who have not been around Black culture, who didn't even bother to talk to Black people about what was going on, have so much to say. And then they want to try to throw respectability politics at us. It's like, no, wait a minute. You don't get to do that. And then, of course, us doing that to each other was something too.
You know, it's interesting because Taria, I will say, I the way I grew up, I did not grow up with my parents saying, don't do this in front of these white people. My parents were just like, don't do this. You know, I'm Southern, I'm Black, y'all. And my dad was in the Air Force. So like, for me, it was just like, don't go out and show your ass ever. Like, you know, just don't do it. You know what I mean? That was it. It was not like, don't do this for white folks. So it's like, I didn't grow up with the respectability piece to it. And, you know, and I also think that like throughout different points of my life, I've learned that it doesn't matter what I do. Like white people are going to see me the way that they want to see me. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter like what level of education. That's what I'm saying. I don't go around like, I know what my education is. I know that like, at this point, I have had to study really hard and work really hard and do twice as much work. So like, I think I've said this, I don't question myself with what I know at this point. I don't question myself with what I can speak to or what I'm capable of. But if I went around like bragging about that and talking about that and trying to get people to see me, like that's going to be a waste of air and a waste of breath. And again, that's what I'm saying. I don't know how much of this is cultural for Wendy or how much of this is Wendy still trying to find herself. But I know that like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, like for me, I'm like, it doesn't really matter what I wear. It doesn't matter what I do. Like, it doesn't matter if I have on like, you know, like dressed like, you know, Dorit and have on like labels. They're not going to see any of that. They're still going to just see whatever narrative pops into their head when they see a Black woman. They just will.
For me, I unfortunately probably grew up with the respectability politics. And so being from Atlanta, when Atlanta first started and living in Dallas, people were so excited. Oh, so Atlanta, yeah. That why don't you act like them? Why I was like, excuse me, it's in all the things that would come out. And I said, well, people can act different. And it was just and I used to watch Atlanta and I enjoyed it because I know that we're all different. But having it be so popular and people coming and why don't you act like this? All these crazy questions. And I'm just thinking, we're all not like this, but it's okay. They are. But a piece of me, a small piece of me that I hate to admit to was kind of like, girl, ladies, no, why are we acting like this in front of white people? And and then I was on Clubhouse and another doctor came in and she said the same thing is, there's a difference between being a spectacle. So yes, let's be entertaining, let's be authentic, let's be who we are. Let's, like Beyonce does, enjoy all aspects of our culture, all hairstyles, everything. But maybe there's a thin line with being a spectacle. Like, okay, people get angry, people fight, but I don't know. It's just a very thin line. And I have to say, for me, when I do see it, I have to catch myself and like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that, but then why can't we? Why can't we do that when I'm laughing at table flips and throwing drinks and and hair pulls and everything else, but I cringe when it's just a push or just a faces getting close or what a wig
wig
shift.
tug.
Yeah, a wig tug.
A wig shift.
No,
a wig shift. A wig shift.
I just shifted it a little. Don't shift, don't touch it. So I do, that's something I can work on myself. And that's what I'm working on, because that's the way growing up in the South. And it's that whole talented 10th, right? We're trying to, you can't be like everybody else, LaKeya. You can't be like your little white friends. The teachers aren't going to let you, being the only one sometimes, they won't, you'll raise your hand and they don't allow you to answer the questions. In kindergarten, they're asking you if your mom gave you the questions to the test because you scored so highly, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, like these type of things. So it is in it, and I hate to admit it. Yes, for me, I would cringe, but then my second point is, okay, get it together. People get angry. They're allowed this.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was very much the same way, and it's something that I battle against all the time as well, LaKeya, because I, even though I was born in Liberia, hence African butterfly, I grew up a majority of my life in upstate New York. So I always say I grew up in very much like middle class white suburbia. I was always like the lone black face in all of the pictures growing up. So I have a little bit of that as well too, where, like when it first happens, I'm like, oh, don't do that. Don't give in to the stereotype. And then I have to block myself and be like, no, be you. Like, it's okay to be upset without instantly worrying that someone's going to say that you're the angry Black woman. Because that's on them if they feel that way, because they're not associating that title with other people. But we, I feel, are constantly tiptoeing around what others may perceive us. And not that everyone doesn't have that a little bit, but kind of like I was saying before, it feels like the weight of the shoulders are put on us when we as Black people, especially representing or on a platform, do something wrong, because we know it's going to get put into that lens as people watch it, like, oh, all Black people or Black people. But I think it makes it harder.
Well, I'm also going to say that, like, here I was on a show where I actually, I think, I'm not as burdened by that. I feel like I kind of, when I see the Housewives of Atlanta, I'm like, all right, cuz, I'm like, I do that too. I do all the things, I mean, I see the Real Housewives of like, Beverly Hills, and I'm like, all right, I do that too. I get it all, right? And so as a person though, who has been on these shows and, and have had appropriate anger, have had fun, I just really honestly feel like it doesn't matter what you do. Like, they will also create a spectacle because it makes sense to them. Like, they will turn, I literally can remember as I'm watching this one particular episode that it was like the hardest of all the episodes. Like, it literally is almost like they wrote me into a whole new character.
Well, actually, Dr. Monica, that's, sorry to interrupt, but like, that's the thing of it, is watching you on your show was really hard for me, because I could actively see what they were doing to you, and it made me so angry watching, especially as someone who relates, who is a Black woman who's educated and has an opinion, and you were never out of line.
It was fun. I'm actually a fun person, and I didn't even get to be that fun.
No, and they went out of your way to make it seem like if you said something little, it was upsetting, or, even panning to the viewpoints of your other races, quite honestly, like the white female, like they love doing that as well, putting like the Black woman who's strong against like the weak and sad, white female who's now being wronged by her. And I could actively see them doing that to you with your editing. And it made me so mad at home. Watching it. Yeah. It's hard watching that.
Yeah. So I'm saying it doesn't really matter. As I'm saying, I think this is the vulnerability of Bravo. And I think Bravo's tried, I've said this also before, like, I don't think so you look at Atlanta. Atlanta's always had high ratings. At one point, it's been like, for years, it was their highest rated franchise, because it always easily fits into the spectacle. There is all the stuff that that is entertaining to white people, even though it still wasn't like the most popular franchise among white people. It was just it made sense, right? And it made sense, and therefore people could get around it. and it was salacious. It was a spectacle. Then you have Potomac. Potomac really has struggled throughout the entire series, even though I watched it from the beginning.
Loved it.
But it struggled. It really struggled because it didn't fit what people were expecting of Black women. It didn't make sense to them. Married to Medicine, even though it was a show about doctors, they were still like a little ratchet from time to time too, right? And so like I think
ATL, y'all.
They like the spectacle of that. So it's, you know, and so I think the thing is, I think that they just don't know. I don't think they know how to like see just Black people kind of just being people. It's almost like they still always have to fit the story to be Black. Like Ebony, I was jealous of Ebony and I felt insecure because I was like, oh my God, she's saying the things that she said. She's, you know, like speaking to the things, like I said all these same things. They edited all of this stuff out, you know, and just like turned me into a mammy and then an angry Black woman. And I'm looking at this and I'm just like, well, shit. They started off so strong and now Ebony is like, they still ruined her. You know, she still doesn't get to be a human being.
I was getting ready to bring her up and they're doing it in the press. And I am so on fire that last year, New York's ratings were so bad. I posted an article about it. They slipped so bad last year. Their ratings were extremely bad. They never once talked about, oh, could this be the end of New York? Could this be the end of the franchise?
Or putting the blame on one person's shoulder.
Fast forward, now they're saying the ratings are so bad, they're thinking about canceling it. And I hear, listen, just so we're clear, all Black people don't always throw out the race card. We don't, non-Black people do. That's number one. Number two, we know what we feel when we hear language that's coded. And I'm listening to people that have big platforms talk about New York in a way that they never have before. And they're acting as if they're not blaming it on one person. They'll say, we need to see Ebony's fun side. We need to see this. Interesting that there was a scene between her and Bershawn where half of it got cut, where the scene where Ebony is in Bershawn's hotel room and you see Bershawn saying, sis, maybe you should try to do it a different way. But what they cut out was Ebony walking in and Bershawn saying, girl, they got us out here doing this white people stuff. And Ebony was like, girl, I know, I called my mama and she said, what are y'all doing? And they had a homegirl moment. Oh, but they cut that out, which is why we need editors and producers that are Black so they can tell a Black story. But I'm watching Page 6 put out using what Ebony has already told us about herself in a negative way. I'm watching people watch this show through the lens they want. I had somebody tell me, I think Ebony's disingenuous because she said she made it on her own, but she didn't say that her boyfriend paid for her place to live. I said in episode 1, she said that her fiance was paying for the place, hence why she was moving. So they didn't even, it's like, how did you completely miss that? And she's actually moving so she can pay her own way. So I'm watching them literally in blogs and even what happened on Instagram last week, these big accounts posting these stories under the guise of, hey, what do y'all think? And their comments are dumpster fires full of racists and them saying we can't moderate our comments. But when Atlanta comes on, they're your Black queens with a K. When Potomac is on and they're messy, they're your Black queens with a K. But I'm literally watching y'all paint a story about Ebony. We just want her to be herself. Who said, for me,
but I think
like
Bravo's doing that though. But Bravo started it. Bravo actually started it.
Doing that.
Bravo started it. They don't know how to. They don't know how to tell a story. They don't know how to allow a Black woman to be smart and fun and you know, or like vulnerable or angry or you know, Kiki. They don't understand. Literally, I can tell you guys when I met with like the executives, they were just like, wow, you know, like they couldn't understand me. And I was just like, I'm just a regular I'm just a person.
Right. But
yes, I'm a Black girl. Right. Yes, I'm a Harvard faculty. Yes, I like being out in the woods. Yes, I also like wearing stilettos. Yes, all of the stuff, and yes, I listen to classical music. Yes, I listen to hardcore rap. Like, yes, I'm track queen. All of the things. It just doesn't make sense. And you can see in that. And it feels like, I don't know what Ebony would have looked like if she had been on Potomac or Atlanta or Married to Medicine. I don't know what I would have looked like, but I'm just saying, that it's just like, it's like the subtleties of stuff that is being said. And even when like I spoke to it, my sense is Ebony spoke to it, my sense is Garcelle speaking to all, they just don't know what to do with it. And so unfortunately, they like who's putting together the stories, the executives and the editors, they literally are seeing it through the white lens.
Yeah.
And and through the scope of whiteness. So it's like, that's why all the Black women or the Black shows are spectacles. And I don't know, maybe if they made a show that was more whole and we saw more whole people, maybe Bravo audiences wouldn't watch it. I don't know.
Right.
And maybe that's also what they're aware of.
I think that's also why Married to Medicine is so good, because you do have like the range. Like you have a Dr. Jackie and then you have a Dr. Heavenly. Both doctors, both smart, but one, they're vastly different people.
But so, Dr. Jackie's like full on respectable,
right.
And that's annoying to me. And I can't deal with that in real life, Exactly. And so is Heavenly, but Heavenly's like respectable, and then she flips to Ratchet. And then she apologizes and be like, I should be respectable.
She's extra ratchet when she flips. It's interesting. And even, you mentioned Ebony and the Housewives of New York and their portrayal of her, like even just from jump, it's like, I'm upset with Ebony's portrayal this season because I feel like so much of the negativity that's directed her way is because of the reaction of the women around her, more so than anything she said or done. Even her dinners were like, oh, this is so boring or whatever. It's like, well, how are you reacting to it? And I feel like they could have had some real learning moments from her and see, when they say, oh, we want to know more about you. She's saying, this is about me.
Hello.
They don't want to hear that. They don't want to.
Well, no, they actually said, teach us about like race. They were like, basically teach us about this whole racism thing, or teach us about like stuff so we can understand it. And I feel like that was the bait she took. And she tried to do that. When I say the bait she took, because that's a normal human thing. All right, well, then I'll show you some stuff that I know.
Because that's her career, that's her life.
It's not my responsibility to teach you.
Right. It's not.
And they were like, but we need you to. They told her that after she was like, y'all called me angry. You just called me. Yeah. And they were like, but you have to teach us. So she's like, all right, then fine, bitches, I'll teach you. And now they turned her into like a wannabe Sojourner Truth or something.
Right.
Like the woman can't just live.
And I think it's frustrating too, because when I forgot who it was, which of you said it, but like, we know when they say certain things, I think it might've been Taria, like how it feels. And we know when it's a microaggression, right? So even if we talk about Ebony in that conversation where Luann called her angry, even though Leah had just been standing up screaming to the whole group, screaming at all of them. Ebony's voice was barely raised. And I think it's part of it is probably because of who she is as a person, but also because she's very aware, as we being Black women, and especially this group, like educated, career Black women, we're very aware of how quickly they are to see that stereotype for us. And I think that maybe other cultures don't realize that we're constantly sort of tiptoeing around that, or navigating how that impacts us. And I think it plays into the respectability politics as well. Like, we're so quick to be seen as the angry Black woman if we misstep, or if we do something wrong. LaKeya, did you have any thoughts on that?
So with Ebony at the, so I know we kind of transitioned, but with Ebony with that dinner, I often think, would she be queen with a K if she did snap and read and all this stuff and had an elevated voice, like when Garcelle was patiently listening to Dorit, and with Dorit, that could have been an hour-long conversation. So if she and I'm with Ebony, you can curse, you can do whatever, but if she cursed at Luann, if she yelled, if she raised her voice, would it be like queen? Because now it fits into their narrative of, this is how Black women snap, this is how Black women get people together. But instead, Ebony was moderated and trying to just not moderate, but just mediate the situation.
Just like placated everybody.
Placated But now it's like, oh gosh, Ebony. But I bet had she just been like snap, 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 pow, 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 queen. Now she's in the stereotype, and we love her, even if just for that one moment.
Yeah, because I mean that's a great point. Because look at the argument with I always forget her name, Brashon Rajwin. Like, look at the way like she snapped at Sonia and went off, and people weren't as angry about her in that moment as they were about Ebony, especially because Ebony said she was more educated, which was just a fact. She was just stating a fact. She didn't say I'm smarter than you, I'm more intelligent than you. Just said I'm more educated, which she was, and they all lost it.
And she went off of what Lou said. Lou may have made a mistake, but Lou said it was about education.
Right.
I feel like the audience also too, and that's, I'm really trying not to fall victim to this, but without even knowing the unconscious bias, I go back to even Crystal, other women of color. Sutton came at her. Crystal wasn't giving the reaction that Sutton wanted when Sutton pulled her aside on that boat. And when she said, I think you're manic, people went nuts. When Sutton said, what crazy world do you live in? It was okay. Then I look at people wanting Dorinda Medley, who told a woman that froze her eggs and may not be able to have a baby, I have a turkey baster because I know you want to have a baby. High five the woman next to her. No, people, Queen Dorinda can fix New York, but Crystal is mental health shaming. And this woman just told this other woman who's having issues having a baby, I have a turkey baster. Even the audience with their unconscious bias, like, really?
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of that in these shows. And that's why I enjoy watching the shows. I mean, I'll be honest, I love the drama as well. But I also watch them as kind of like a people study, and to see how people react to different situations, see what's universal amongst all of them. Like, that's just people, and then what isn't. I find it interesting to watch. And I'm glad that we're having these conversations, because I feel like a few years ago, even though we would have kind of talked about it, maybe like with our homegirl on the side, like we weren't actively being like, here's the race problem with this show, here's the racial viewpoint, here's how we're seeing these things. And I think a lot of it is people also just don't know certain things because it's not something that touches their world. So I'm glad that we have the ability to talk about these things. Like, I'm glad you have your clubhouses and your podcasts, and, you know, now that I have this, because I think that it puts us on a little bit more of a neutral ground to talk about these touchy topics. So I definitely appreciate you all joining me for this first episode to talk about respectability politics. Did anyone have anything else they wanted to add before we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you for creating the space, and to let people, as Wendy told Giselle, I'm putting you on notice. Just like white women can be angry, we can be angry too, and we are allowed to explore those emotions.
Absolutely. I love that. I definitely love that, because that's something that's been hard for me, always thinking that I had to just be like the softest, nicest, sweetest person for people to hear me. And I'm like, nope, I don't care what you think. I'm moving on to the Dr. Monica way of thinking, because like, this is me.
I was like, don't matter, you can whisper.
This is
Listen,
me.
I've been, as of recently, I've been told that I was attacking somebody because they asked a question based on something that they've said. You know, I've been called all sorts of stuff. I've been called belittling. I've, like, on the show, it's called belittling. Like, literally, I'd ask a question, and then they would replay it back of somebody mimicking what I asked, and they were like, neck popping and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, it doesn't matter what I do. I don't roll like that. I'm not trying, I can't fight. I can tell somebody off, but I can't fight. So like, why am I even act like I'm a fight? You know, like, I'm just curious, but it's like, it doesn't make sense. So people will always rewrite narratives. And yeah, respectability politics, I get it. It's not something that I live by. It's not something that I feel encumbered by. I learned pretty early on, it doesn't really matter. And I'm grateful that my parents, like, you know, I think it's a military background too that helped a bit, you know, like, I'm grateful that I had that. I do think it's allowed me to have a little bit of freedom and take up opportunities. But at the same time, in a setting like Bravo, where you are not in control of how people put together your narrative and your story, it can come back to bite you, and it can be really hard. So I give props to Ebony. My prayers are with her. I know homegirl is probably struggling. I could tell you how struggled last summer. Lost a lot of sleep, gained a lot of weight, cried a lot. It's really hard to see that happen to yourself when you like have no control, and that people really take on that this is who you are. And like, it's just, it's tough. So my heart goes out to every Black woman that even, or every Black person, but especially Black women that are confident to go on these shows and confident as people going on these shows and then have to watch themselves be completely deconstructed to make a white person comfortable. It's a very hard thing to do.
Absolutely. And I'm grateful to them for putting themselves out there and giving us the space and opportunity to talk about them. I'm grateful to all of you for joining me. For those watching or listening, I'm going to make sure I include the links to all of their things so that you can find them. Part of why I invited them on here is their great insight and opinion, which you heard, over this time as we've talked. I really truly enjoy spending time with all of you and talking with all of you. And I hope that those who joined us enjoyed it as well. I'm not going to say when the episodes will be on because I haven't decided that yet. But they will be on. The next episode, I'm actually getting together with the guys. It's going to be called It's Raining Men. And we're talking to a few guy commentators about the men of Bravo, which should be fun. And then after that is I Get It From My Mama, talking about those mother-daughter relationships. So we're just going to keep these conversations going, and it'll be with different people each time. So I hope you'll continue to join us here on Bold, Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Bold, Black, and Beautiful. We're beautiful. We're Bold, Black, and Addicted to Bravo. Thank you all so much.
I love you, Nyemade. I love you.
Thank you.
Northern Lights.